All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the In the 11 podcast. I'm your host, Brendan Griffiths, and this is the show where we bring on those from the world of football to show you what it takes to be in the 11 at the highest possible level. Back in the studio for another episode, which is still a pretty cool sentence to say as a podcaster, but this week's guests are very special. We have a repeat guest, her third time now on the podcast, and a debut on the podcast as well, which is always exciting. My mom and my sister are here in Australia, which is very cool for me. So looking forward to having them on, talk about their trip down here and kind of what we've done so far. This episode will probably come out, unfortunately, a couple weeks after they have left. But we'll talk about what we've been up to now and kind of as it's present. So thank you guys for coming on. So obviously, as I just said there, my mom's been on the podcast before. She's been on twice, once when I was in Denmark and once very early on when we were still doing them at home back in New York. And yeah, I think you were the first ever guest. It was like episode 6 or something like that. And now we've already surpassed 100 episodes, which is pretty cool. And Elena is on the podcast as well, my sister. And first and foremost, how weird was it that I just called you Elena?
So it was so weird when I saw that you were doing like the test recording on there and it said like Elena and mom. I was like, that's so weird to look at.
Yeah. So for those wondering, basically, obviously that is her name is Elena, but that is, I don't think I've ever called her that unless it's like in a very professional setting, like, you know,
introducing new people or
introducing
like that,
or like we're at the DMV and it's like who do you, like that's it. And it's a multitude, it's a plethora of nicknames and you respond to many. So if you hear any other names throughout the duration of the show, then it's
me.
It's Elena. It's Wayne's.
I find myself even like when I'm at work and stuff, like obviously everyone there knows me as like Elena or whatever, but when I like will retell stories and I'm like talking about when I'm with friends or when I'm with like you guys and I'm like, yeah, then my brother looked at me and he was like, Lane, what are you doing? And I think in my head, I'm like, they have no idea that I have all these nicknames outside of work. Right. And I just like pulled that out of nowhere.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's good that you picked like one that was close because like I'm sure there's other ones that I've had where just people don't even know how that even relates to your nickname, but
not even related.
Yeah, so I guess why don't we start with when did you guys get here and how long have you been here? And obviously I know it was quite the adventure to get down here, but how did all that go?
It was okay. It was good. We definitely had some roadblocks.
Some challenges.
But like, so I know like I personally, like I've only flown out of the country one other time and it was just like from New York to Mexico. And it was like basically one flight. Like it was just like New York to Orlando to like the airport in Mexico. I know Mim hasn't done a lot of flying out of the country, so maybe if you want to go first and talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I've only flown out of the country once, and that was many, many years ago. So obviously everything was so much different with
because that was like pre 9/11, right?
Yeah. So I mean, before TSA is what it is and everything like that, but it was a very short trip just to New York and then from there out of the country. So this was definitely different because we had a total of 4 flights that we took. Plus I drove a ways too to get to our flight. So it has been it was like a 2.5 day or so travel time.
Yeah.
All encompassing from start to finish. So it was a long journey, and starting off in the US, that worked pretty well until we got to LAX, and that's when some of our fun began.
Yeah. So basically Mim drove from like our hometown in New York to where I live in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And like we had a flight, I think like 7 a.m. or something like that. So we had to get up at like 2-3 o'clock in the morning because we obviously wanted to like shower and be as clean as possible before we were going to be traveling for 2 days.
Yeah.
So then we got to the airport, Pittsburgh to Chicago, totally fine. I honestly at this point don't even remember Chicago. And then Chicago to LAX was fine. It was a little bit like longer of a flight, but like nothing really happened. And then LAX, we had to do like a self transfer. So we got there and then we had to like basically almost leave the airport, like exit security, and then go back in and like recheck in, re-go through security. So just trying to find the international terminal was a little like crazy because like we'd never been to LAX or like California in general, and it's a big airport.
Yeah.
And we're trying to like figure out where we need to go, and there's of course construction because I'm convinced that every airport in America is always under construction.
Yeah.
Never finished, always under construction. So we ended up like talking to this woman who worked at the airport, and we were like, if we leave here, like we can get to the international terminal, right? And she was like, well, yeah, but you don't have to leave. Like if you know your gate, you can just like stay on this side of security and like get there. And we were like, no, we have to like leave. We have to get out of security because we don't have our gate because it's a self-transfer. And she kind of wasn't getting that.
Yeah.
And I get it because like I'm sure me and mom were not the best at explaining that to her. But she was like, oh, like if you had your gate, you could just go this way. And we were like, okay, but we don't have our gate. So can we go this way? And she was like, yeah, but if you have your, and I was like, okay, thank you so much. So we went and we rechecked in at our airline. And as we're checking in, he was checking us in and he was like, oh, like asking me, do you have another passport? And I was like, no. Like what? I was like, I have my driver's license. Like, do you need that? Just thinking like maybe he needed 2 forms of ID or something like that. And he was like, no, I was able to check like her, like mom, all the way through from LA to Perth. But for you, I can't check you in past Manila. So I have you going from LA to Manila, but I can't check you in from Manila to Perth. And I was like, what does that mean? Like, you're just gonna have to leave me in Manila? Like
right. He's like, well, you can talk to someone once you're there and figure it out there. And we're like, we'd really like to try to figure it out here.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like there was some like it was like this e-travel thing you had to fill out to go to the Philippines, and it was like a lot of like COVID stuff, and something about I think like that you weren't running away from like domestic violence or something like that. And we filled that out, and so I thought we were like all set. And then he was like, yeah, no, it's no big deal. You're just gonna have to recheck in the Philippines, like in Manila. And I was like, in my head, I'm like, okay, like if that's what we have to do, that's what we have to do. Like I'm just gonna do it. It's whatever. But I was also like, I really don't want to do that because like I don't speak the language. Like I don't know that airport at all.
Yeah, but there'll be people that like speak English and stuff like.
And at the time, like I think rationally, I knew there was gonna be at least a few people who spoke English, but just like at my brain at the time, I was like, oh my God, I don't know the language and I'm going to be asking people and they have no idea what I'm trying to say. Like I was like a little overwhelmed, but I was like,
if one of us had to recheck in and the other one didn't, then Elena would have to leave the airport and like come back in, and I would be inside the airport somewhere else. And then we'd have to try to find each other again.
Yeah.
I was wondering, I guess there is official languages of the Philippines.
Isn't it like Tagalog or something?
Maybe it just says Filipino and English as well.
But
I think a lot of people speak English because I don't know. I just remember there was like a comedy special with Joe Coy where he was talking about that. But yeah, so your guys's travel was, and like I felt bad because like I couldn't do anything, and I know obviously the beginning part was, which we did that sort of plan because it wound up being like the least expensive. Like it saved you like hundreds of dollars by flying to LAX and doing a self transfer versus doing a a continuous flight or whatever. So on paper, like it kind of made sense. Like it was going to be a little more stressful, a little more inconvenient, I guess, but it was all going to kind of be worth it. And then like and now clearly we know, like, all right, let's try and avoid, like, no offense to Manila, like try and avoid the Manila airport because that was crazy getting you guys transferred, and then it got delayed like a bunch of hours, and then like and that's the worst, I think, like when you're on a super long trip like that, I mean, really any trip, but like a super long one like that, and then stuff gets delayed.
Yeah.
Like, I think I said this to you guys, like, but when you're doing those super long trips, you kind of think at first, you're like, oh, it'd be nice to have a little bit of a layover, like a little bit of a break. But then you get off the plane and you're like, well, I'm just like sitting here anyway, so I might as well be like going towards where I'm trying to go.
Yeah.
There's no difference in me just sitting in an airport versus sitting up in the plane and getting closer to my destination. So, and then obviously once you got here, unfortunately they didn't have the bags as well because there was the whole Philippine situation with the bags.
Yeah. And I think it would have been like having the longer layover. I mean, granted, we didn't want to have to stay there even beyond the 5 hours initially planned. But if we had known this is our gate, this is where we need to be when it's time to go, and that our luggage was going from one plane to the other, we could have relaxed some. We could have walked around. We could have enjoyed our time in between a little bit more. But we didn't know where to go. They didn't have a gate for us. They said we needed to just listen for an announcement. They kept making announcements, but you couldn't hear what they were saying.
Yeah.
And we didn't know where to go to find out the information. So we were just kind of stressed going from like one place to another, trying to listen to speakers, trying to look at little TV screens.
Yeah.
They didn't even have a big board like most airports. They had just little small TV screens that just listed
it just had like, it was like almost like 2 columns on the screen, and it'd be like the gate number and then the flight number. So not even like that where that flight was going or anything. It would just be like PR 113, and you were like, where's my ticket again? Like, let me look. And that was the thing too. It was like, maybe we were in the wrong spot for most of the time, but most of the time in the airport, we were sitting on the floor. So like, I almost would have rather been in an airplane because I would have been in a seat. Like, and I think that was partially our fault because we didn't know where to go and we were a little confused. We probably could have sat in chairs. But like, yeah, exactly. Like, if it was on an airplane, at least I would have been getting closer to the destination rather than just like sitting still for 7 hours.
Yeah. I mean, I think, well, one, it seems like probably whatever you went through was probably like the craziest travel experience. Like, I can't imagine it's going to be able to be, topped on the way back. But there's also something too about going home that it just, for whatever reason, it seems to like be just a little bit kind of easier, smoother. Like, I remember even, like when I was coming home from Denmark, like going to Denmark, I was like so stressed and nervous, but that was also because of the time of it too.
Right.
But there's just something about when you're like going home, even if it's crazy, you're like, I'm a US passport. Like, I'm going back. Like, I'm not. So I don't know. I think it will be, I'm still going to be long, and it's still, I'm sure going to have like some stresses when you go back, but I don't think it will be, knock on wood.
Right.
I don't think it will be as,
well, even too, once we got to Australia, I mean, it was such a quiet airport. It was so empty. Everything seemed so peaceful. And we're like, we made it. Everything's good now. Like, there was like 2 people in front of us at customs. We went right through. We're like, oh, this is awesome. Then we go to baggage, and that's when we're waiting and waiting. And as it's coming through, it's like other people aren't noticing, but like I'm saying to Lane, I'm like, it's the same luggage that's come through like we just keep seeing the same bags. There's no new bags coming through. And people next to us are like, do any of these look familiar? And I'm like, yeah, this is like the 5th time that they've come through. They're like, oh, there's not new ones? I'm like, no, I don't think so. So that's when the line started to form at the counter.
Yeah.
And we realized that a whole bunch of us that I think connected from LAX to Manila, that we just all didn't get our bags.
Yeah. And that was like the thing about like when she was talking about the Perth airport being like so like big and open and like calm and chill. And that was like the thing in the Manila airport. There wasn't like a lot of, I think that was kind of like an overall theme of the airport of what I saw. There wasn't a lot of like signage or like screens that told you where to go. It was a lot of relying on like you heard people like yelling. And they'd be like, transfers over here, international over there, domestic over here. And I was like, I didn't see where you were pointing. Like, and it was a lot of like that type of stuff. And we would go up to people and be like, do we need to get in this line? And like, no, this is like immigration, like back to the Philippines. And we were like, oh, how is this so close to the transfer state? Like, why is this like so close? And also like, you're the sole person, like you're the sole like sign. Like this person standing there was the only way to know that like, oh, I'm not supposed to be over there.
Yeah.
There was no like big sign, no like, don't come in here if you're not a Philippines like resident or stuff like that. So it was very much like, oh, I almost just made a huge mistake right there. Like, let me just turn around and now I'm where I'm supposed to be. Like,
there was just massive lines in different locations where like you had to go through the rope queues and people are like yelling to go here and go there, and massive amounts of people are going in different directions, and we're kind of standing in the middle, kind of looking around in circles, like I don't know where we're supposed to be or which line, and we don't want to do the wrong thing.
And I'm sure like if we were more seasoned international travelers, it wouldn't have been as stressful. But like I'd only been in like one other international airport in my life, and they spoke Spanish, which I am nowhere near fluent, but like I took it in high school. I could recognize a few words here and there. Like I knew it a little bit, where like here I was like completely out of my element. So I was like, ooh, I'm just going to stand here and like wait till someone yells at me because I'm in the wrong spot.
Yeah, it is just kind of, I guess, about reps with it.
Well,
just
it was funny. The one, we thought we had to go to this one desk where, again, there was a whole bunch of people going. And we talked to this one woman and she told us, I can't remember, but wherever it was, we weren't supposed to be there. So then again, we're trying to figure out where to go. And the other side was saying, you're not supposed to be here. So we're like, I think we need to go back to that same desk. So we're like, we'll go to the right side so we don't go to the same person that just told us not to be here. And then she moved over to that side and we had her again. We're like, oh no.
I went up and I was like, I know, us again. I have another question. I felt like that was kind of a common theme. We kept going up to like the same people who would be like, oh no, not here. And then we'd go up to them again like 10 minutes later and be like, what about now? Can we be here now?
Yeah, because it's like, well, do you have a gate? Or like, no, we don't know the gate. Well, you have to find out your gate. And we're like, how might we do that? Like, who will help us with that?
Yeah, that's the thing about, a really well-run, efficient like airport can really change like how your trip goes. But yeah, a lot of those, like if you're on super long layovers, a lot of times they won't give you your gate until like, an hour or two before, because I think sometimes they don't even know which one, what's going to be open and where they'll come into and all that stuff. But so then you made it, and then we were able to get your bags. It was only 24, 48 hours, I guess, later.
It was like 2 days.
Yeah, which is at least good that we were able to get them.
Right.
I honestly, like, I had overheard something like in the baggage, like at the baggage desk where everyone's like in line, like trying to like say, hey, you lost my stuff. I thought I heard something that it wasn't going to possibly come in till next Monday. So like in that line, sitting there, I was in my head preparing myself to be like, all right, I'm going to go up there and they're going to tell me I'm going to have no clothes and they're going to send it back to New York. Because one of the first questions I asked was, how long is it going to be? Because we're only going to be here for a week. That was like one of the first things I said, because I was like, I'll give you this Perth address, but like, when's it coming? Because I might need to give you a New York or Pennsylvania address.
You might be shipping it internationally here.
Yeah.
But how then, I mean, talk to me. So then, obviously, that's stressful. You're dealing with that once you get off. But now, like, you're in Perth, and the plan was I was going to come and pick you guys up and then bring you home probably for a bit and then go to the game.
4-hour delay kind of threw that.
Yeah.
Threw that
So
off a little.
what was then, I guess, your first impressions of Australia, first impressions of Perth, I guess maybe that first day?
Yeah, so honestly, just from the airport, like walking out, I think I told you this too, it gave me very like Denver, Colorado vibes, where it was just like super just open, and like, because I feel like when we were in Denver, it was like everything was really flat until it was like a big mountain. So like you could see for a really like far distance. I kind of felt that way in the airport. And I just felt like when I walked out and it was like, oh my gosh, like fresh air, trees, like all these birds flying around. I was like in nature, like, and there was like hardly any people like out, like in like the pickup area. And it wasn't like some of those airports where you go and it's like everyone's trying to get you to come in their cab.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Yeah, we only had one person.
Yeah, like
It
one
seemed like he
person-
jumped out of the bushes.
yeah, he came up and he was like, "Oh, you guys like waiting for an Uber?" And I was like, "Mm-hmm." And he was like, "How much is it costing you?" And I was like, "Oh, someone ordered it for us, so like we're good. Think so." Just like straight up lied. Like,
Yeah, it's funny. I never had that, but I think I came at busier times when I
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were like the only ones waiting at the little
yeah, that's
Uber
probably why.
spot. So
yeah. And then even like when we were in the Uber driving from the airport like to your apartment, and I know I've kind of said this to both of you too, I think I was expecting this huge like culture shock, like just to be here and be like, oh my gosh,
Yeah,
like
it's so
how
different.
like just be able to look out the window and be like, this is Australia. And it definitely is like super cool, like really pretty. But I also just kind of felt like I'm just in a city in America that I've never been to before.
Yeah.
Where, and like, of course, obviously there's the driving on the other side of the road, everything's in kilometers and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But it was like, it was so cool, but it also felt like a little bit familiar.
Mm.
And I think like it's because, you know, they speak English, like you were saying, the songs in the radio are like the same, like
Yeah.
like it's not like the Uber driver's trying to talk to me in Spanish or something like that. Like he's like, "Hey, how's your day?" And I'm like, "It was good. How was yours?" Like,
Yeah, that's why for me, like this move was not like seamless, but I think like easier in some sense because I do kind of have like some of the international travel like done, like I've done it before, international like living places, and so like some of just those little nuance things about like going and living in a new place I kind of am already familiar with, and then this one had a lot less barriers because you know you can go and talk to everyone straight away and it's just way easier to communicate, and yeah, like culturally a lot of the things are the same, so like even you know even if I'd gone to Germany and I'd like really known the language well, which I think when I was gonna go in 2020, I was like starting to get kind of okay at it.
Right.
There's still like, you know, really like important in-depth conversations are still you can't quite get there yet. And also just like joking and laughing and stuff like that. That's kind of one of the last things. Like humor is kind of one of the last things that you can really get. But so yeah, this one for me was a little bit easier. And I kind of figured that for you guys as well, that it would definitely feel different in a lot of ways, but it would also be like, okay, I'm not, you know, completely out of my element.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, like you were saying, just the driving, just everything being on the opposite side.
Yeah.
And obviously we knew about that and we've heard about it and you told us and we just knew in different countries it's like that. But to actually experience it and be there, I mean, even now when you're driving around, it just feels so weird as you're taking different turns. Like feel like we're going the wrong way. We're on the wrong side of the road. So
there's definitely been a few times you've gone to take a turn, and I'm so glad I'm in the back seat because like I know it would have freaked you out. I've been like, oh shit, like we're about to go head on with somebody. I like grip the sides a little bit. I'm like, okay, relax. I like can't look when you're driving because I get way too like, oh, we're going the wrong way. Like
which by the way is like I think it's crazy that they just if you have a license from anywhere, they're just like, yeah, do it.
Yeah.
I didn't expect, like, when you first brought up renting a car, in my head, I was like, oh, there's no way. Like, they're not going to let him with an American license? No. And then I was like, wait.
Yeah, literally all I had to do when I picked it up, it was like the car, you know, the card that it's going to be paid for and license. And I just kind of like sheepishly handed the New York one and he just took a copy of it. And I was like, okay, yeah, here you go. Here's the keys. I was like, all right. And so that first when you like drive off the lot,
gripping the wheel.
Yeah, that's a lot. And like I've said to you guys a bunch, but it you get used to the road thing more. But it's just like I even noticed when you drive a car at home in the States, like you're so accustomed to looking up to your right to see the rear view and then like the other side. So you keep kind of first going there and it's always on the left side. And that's just the whole, and it being on the right side of the car, I think that's the thing that throws it off for me the most. But yeah, I don't know. I've like kind of adjusted to it a little bit now. Like I feel more, so then who knows, maybe it'll be weird. I don't think it'll be weird when I go back home because I'll have big break in between driving again. But that was so where are we now in the point of the story? Now we're still on day one, so I have the car rented now at this point, but you guys took Uber home to my place and then Ubered to the game because I had to
Yeah.
leave
Yeah.
before.
And we thought that you had already left,
Yeah.
so we were like trying to use the trying to find the key that you
Yeah.
maybe left for us. So we're rummaging around, we're looking at all these places that you might have hidden the key, and then we see someone moving inside the apartment that we think is yours, and then we're like, maybe we're at the wrong apartment because we thought you were gone.
Yeah.
I had that moment for a second, but then I looked and I was like, no, that's for sure Brendan. And I was like, hi, please open the door.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so we kind of surprised you there. We were just like, the Uber came so quick, it was just like seconds away, and we realized that we were in the wrong section, so we had to like kind of run down the sidewalk to get to that area. So between doing that and then on the drive there, I mean, we were still just kind of processing like what we just went through, and that we have no bags and it has all our clothes, and like, what are we gonna do?
I also feel like for me, I didn't even think about texting you and being like, hey, we're getting in the Uber or anything, because when you were like, oh, I can't come pick you up, like I got it right for the game. In my head, I was like, he's already at the game. I know it's like 10 a.m., but like in my head, I was like, whoa, he's probably out there warming up right now. Like, why am I gonna text him?
Yeah, because I mean, we knew we were at the airport for a considerable period of time. The line was quite long, just dealing with all of that, and there was only like one person for the longest time trying to help people. So
Yeah.
we just figured you had already been gone, and we were like, oh, we just want to be able to just take a shower and then make sure we can get to the game on time. So
yeah. But yeah, we got in, we like got showered, whatever, and then going to your game was like, it was crazy because at first it was like a lot of like I think like the younger teams, right? Like it looked a little bit like high school or college or something like that.
Yeah, so yeah, like every time that we play here, the 18s play first, like in the late morning, and then like I think it's like noon or 1 or something, the reserve team plays, and then we play at the end.
Yeah, because there was definitely still like a little bit of a younger crowd, like just like out and about, and like especially with the weather, it just like I walked in, I was like, this feels like a high school soccer game, like because there was like, you know, like all like the girlfriends like sitting on the bleachers, and they're like wearing his little like jacket and like all that stuff, and I just felt like, especially because it was like fall and like that's like soccer season in New York, so I was like, this just feels like I'm back at high school for a second. And then I sat down and I was like, oh, here they come. And it was like we saw you guys walking in, and I was like, oh, this is for real now. Like all like little high school kids.
Oh, those are adults.
Yeah, like all little high school kids like went and sat down, and I was like, okay, this is for real. Goodness. Like, and it just like, I just remember like, cause you guys were like warming up or whatever, like at like a field, like kind of far back. So like we were sitting on the bleachers, and you and like your whole team like walked up, and I was like, whoa, like I was like, oh, this is so crazy.
Yeah, so like this was something that I think like I had an episode with Zach recently, and he kind of like mentioned it at the end, like he was like that this is like 5 years kind of like, or 5 or 6 years like in the making, which is kind of insane to think about, and it kind of like weighed on me a little bit like in the week leading up to it, just like because I always kind of felt that like that just that pressure, because like that's always been the thing, right? Or I was like, oh, it'd be so cool if you guys could come see me play some other place. Like when I was in Germany, obviously it didn't really work out because you guys couldn't have stayed with me. Denmark didn't because of COVID, and then so here it like felt like the perfect opportunity. And then just I like in the very beginning of the season, I obviously had my injury, and then like it's been like not really like that up and down, but I guess a little bit, just like in kind of still maintaining health and whatever. And I just like didn't feel the best in training the previous week, but I was like, I have to play. Like I just felt like that so much, like I had to play, because it was. This felt like so long of like wanting this specific part of it, because it was always. Yeah, it was cool for me to come and do it, but also for you guys to come and see me do it and like be there and be a part of it. So I guess what was that like to go and actually like watch a game? Because I mean, before that, you had seen me play
Shockers.
Yeah, at home.
Yeah.
And well, like you came to obviously a ton of college games, and then there was kind of like a hiatus for a while where I was like overseas, different places, and then I had the season at home with Shockers. I was gonna have another one with Shockers, but then my wrists and stuff. So what was it like, I guess, now to see me play again, but also see me play like different place?
It was like, I don't know, it felt very full circle, I guess, kind of. Like, we come, travel days and days and all this time, and it's like the first thing we do is like watch you play a soccer game. And I was like, that just feels so right. Like, that feels so like as it should.
Yeah.
And it was also just because I was thinking about that too, like as we got like closer to the trip, I was like, dang, like when was the last time I saw you play like in person? And I think it was at that one Shockers game where like everyone and their brother was like there.
Yeah.
But even then I was like, it's been so long. And I was like, this is something that like I know you were saying it's been like 5 years in the making, whatever. Like I must feel that way too. Like I feel like I've been waiting 5 years or however long, like longer probably, to be somewhere like overseas, you playing like that's my brother.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, you're wanting my number. Yeah, that's him. Yep, I'm with him. Like,
yeah.
I almost like I kind of wanted to almost like talk really loud in my American accent to be like, oh yes, I'm the American player. Yes, he's my brother. Like, I don't know if you picked up on that, but yes, I'm with him.
Yeah, that's cool.
It was so awesome too. I mean, obviously, I've always been trying to like, you had some streaming when you were in Germany, so I would watch some games from there. And then, being able to watch your games where, time wise is 3 a.m. So, and setting the alarm to, to watch on a smaller screen to be able to see you play, but just to then finally be able to be there in person and to be able to travel across the world to see you and to be able to see you play. It was just an awesome experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely felt awesome for me as well. I mean, obviously I wish that the game had overall gone a little bit better. Like it was kind of frustrating the way it ended, but like I don't know. It was we've already spoken about it, but it was a weird game because I felt like, oh, this is we were playing really, really well. Like it seemed like everything was going in the right direction to kind of have the result and everything be like the perfect day.
Yeah.
And that's just I guess sometimes the way that sport works, and it's cruel, but and then unfortunately too, like kind of getting injured and stuff. But I don't know, it just in a weird way, I still almost like felt this like once the game was over, because I was like, all right, yeah, I know, like I kind of just did something and I'm gonna be out for a little bit. But if it had been this game that I was like watching on the sideline with you guys, I would have been so upset. So yeah, I mean that part stinks, but I don't know. We'll get on with that part. But I guess like I guess if we talk about too before I even came to Australia at all, like what was that kind of like for you when I was even maybe first talking about coming back here, or coming here, like coming back to play somewhere? Like I don't know, what was kind of your guys' thoughts?
For me, like I feel like you always are like when you're home, you're always kind of talking about like places you could go to play. Like you'll bring up like lots of different countries and stuff like that. And so I feel like every time you bring it up, I'm like, oh yeah, like I could totally see you doing that. But it's almost like not until you're like talking about flights and stuff, I'm like, oh, this is for real now.
Right.
Like this
It's
is
happening.
like this is where it's gonna be.
Yeah.
So I remember I was like at work once, and it was like during lunch, and I was just like talking to my coworkers, and I was like, yeah, like my brother's like talking about Australia, like that could be so cool. And they're like, yeah, that's so cool. And I was like, yeah, And then I was coming home for like Christmas break, and you were like, oh, like, do you want to like help me look for flights? I think you'd like had text me that. And in my head, I was like, I mean, kind of weird to be looking for like, you just want to like look at prices or something? Like, what's up? And then, cause like, I hadn't like realized that it was for real yet.
Yeah.
So then I got home and you're like, all right, let's look for flights. And I was like, all right, like, do you have a date though? Like, when are we looking for these flights? Like, when are you trying to leave? And you were like in January. And I was like, wait, this is real now? Like, it kind of like, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, like not surprised. Cause like, obviously I knew like if it was something you had talked about, it was something you'd seriously considered, but I just didn't know that it was like set yet.
Yeah.
So then Peter just be like, yeah, like help me look for flights. And I was like, oh my gosh. Okay. So happy for you. Not really ready for you to leave and be like 2 days away.
Yeah.
But yeah, like obviously just so happy for you. And like I said, like you'll talk about a lot of different places, and it's like I know that any of them are like you would seriously consider.
Yeah.
Like, and like, if once you just like pick one, like that's what's gonna happen, and you're gonna get it done. And if it doesn't really work, you're just gonna on to the next. Like, you're either way, it's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think too, you had mentioned some things, here and there, but you weren't really talking about it as much until you
Yeah, that was
had
kind of deliberate.
everything kind of set in your mind. So when you had mentioned it and you weren't really saying that much more, I was like, oh, okay. And then all of a sudden, like Lane said, as over Christmas when you're like booking it and it's like, oh, and it's happening in like 2 weeks, we're like, wow, this is fast, but we can,
Yeah.
and thinking about like before we had planned when you were going back to Germany, when you had set it up, you had another team, you had a contract, everything was good. We had planned, our trip. We were going to Germany this time. We were going to see you after graduation. We were going to book our flights as soon as you were settled, and you knew everything was good there. But then obviously everything changed with
Mhm.
with COVID. But just even thinking at that point, going to Germany was going to be a significant trip. It seemed like a long
Yeah.
a long trip, and then then to find out it was like Western Australia, where it couldn't possibly be any farther away, or like, wow, that's going to be a huge trip, but we got to do it. We got to find a way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just so happy for you too, just knowing, obviously going when the weather and the climate here is so much more your type of weather and
Mhm.
Yeah.
our type of weather, to know, previously when you were in Germany and it was mostly cold and raining and dark and gloomy, and not having, speaking the same language was definitely a challenge and a little bit of a barrier there. There was more to deal with, where there was going to be so many things that were going to be more positive
Yeah.
by coming here. So we knew that was just going to be a much better experience for you in that regards. And then everything else with soccer was just going to be that much better.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, how I didn't really talk about it as much. Like I kind of did that deliberately because with Germany actually, when I first went to Germany, happened relatively quickly as well. But
Yeah.
that was just the nature of like when the
Right.
opportunity kind of came up, and that's sometimes like I've spoken about on here. That's sometimes just the way things sort of work. Like, okay, like we have something for you. Do you want it? It's next week. And you're like, all right. And kind of with things like that, it's not necessarily something that you can always deliberate on for a
Right.
long time. But Denmark was different. And I felt like because I knew so much in advance and like had talked about it for so long, it was like so hyped up, and it seemed like everybody kind of knew by the time I was going. And so then to go there, and then I didn't have a great experience with it, and just felt like very defeated. And then like coming back, and then you're back like kind of sooner than expected, and everybody's like, oh, what happened? And you just feel like, especially with all the hype to it, you just kind of feel down on it. So
Yeah, like you put more pressure on yourself.
yeah, and there was this thing kind of like I felt like people would, if I brought up going somewhere again, wherever it may be, that people would be like, oh, like, do you remember what happened last time type thing. And yeah, so I was just kind of like, you know what, I don't want to like make a big thing out of this. I don't want it to be like this huge fanfare leading all the way up to it, because that I feel like is going to put that same type of pressure on me again when I'm
Right.
going to get over here. And if I kind of went into it thinking like same type of thing, like if I go again and I don't like it again, then maybe this is just like not the thing that I want to continue doing. And like I kind of went into this experience with that more of like an experiment type than like, all right, I need to go sign another contract, or I need to take the next step in my career. It was like, let's go see like if this is still something that I want to do.
Yeah,
And
more
then
open-minded about it.
much more open-minded
Yeah.
about it. So yeah, there was less like fanfare kind of leading up into it. And I think it helped, honestly. It helped just to feel less pressure, kind of like less people knew. Like there's a bunch of people I think that have messaged me and they're like, you're in Australia? And I'm like, yeah. Which is I'm kind of okay with. But I guess, does it feel any different comparatively to all the other, I know we just spoke about it there a little bit, but does it feel any different comparatively, whether that's the lead up to it or just now actually being here compared to like the other 2 times when I've been living overseas?
Yeah, like I definitely feel like like you said, like the lead up, it was very like all of a sudden you were leaving. And it was kind of like that way for Germany, I feel like a little bit, but that
Mhm.
was also the added part of like you had like that was your first time like going to play overseas, so there
Yeah.
was like that extra element of that.
Mhm.
But yeah, I definitely feel like kind of like mom was saying about like the weather and like they speak English here and stuff like that. Because for me, and of course I'm like biased because you're my brother, but when it like wasn't the best time in Denmark, I was like, oh, then something's wrong with Denmark. Like I was like, something's wrong with that team. Something's wrong with like, because like if he's not having the best time ever, then like it's their problem. Like he's perfect. What's going on? So I almost was like, oh yeah, like he's gonna love it in Australia because he's gonna do great. Like that's just in my brain, like that's the only option. Like you're just gonna do great because that's what you do. And like if you don't, then it's not your fault. And like I said, obviously I'm biased, like you're my brother. But yeah, I just it felt almost like something I never thought about. Like Australia never really came to my mind when I was like big places for soccer.
Mm.
But then when you had said it, it was almost like a light bulb turned on. I was like, oh my God, wait, that would be perfect. Like it's summer right now.
Yeah.
You love summer.
Mm.
They speak English. Like it just seems like the perfect place for you. And like not to put pressure, like if you're not loving every single day here, like, well, what do you mean? It's perfect for you. Like not to put that pressure on you, but like it just seemed like kind of something I'd never thought about. But then once you brought it up, I was like, oh my gosh. Like it was like a serious like light bulb moment where I was like, this could be it. Like this might be the best case scenario. Like, yeah, I just thought it was like perfect for you.
Yeah, and just so happy for you too that it feels like, you like being here, you like the surroundings, you found a good team, a
Yeah.
good fit, and you have the opportunity to get to know the guys versus in Denmark where you didn't speak the language and due to COVID restrictions, you weren't really allowed to
Do anything,
socialize
yeah.
much, and there wasn't really much to do or see because you were so limited and so much with, being in like a quarantine type situation that
Yeah.
this just seems like it has been such a good fit for you so far and such a positive experience. And
Yeah.
that just makes us just happy too. I mean,
Yeah.
just knowing that you're having a good time and you're enjoying yourself and, hearing it in your voice, seeing you smile is such
Yeah.
a big difference where some of your other experiences haven't worked out so well, and it just breaks your heart from this side when we hear it and we see it, and we're trying to be there and be supportive for you, and the same time we're like trying to encourage you and
Yeah.
and trying to raise your spirits a little bit, and sometimes that was difficult too because we try to say positive things and you'd be like, you're not listening, this isn't
Yeah. Yeah.
this isn't positive. It's like, well, we know we're
Trying to
trying.
put a spin on it. Yeah.
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 Because it's like trying to find that balance of like being supportive and being encouraging without, and like kind of like pushing you to stay without pushing you to stay. Because like obviously we're not like the first time something goes wrong, we're not gonna be like, all right, just come home.
Yeah.
Like, because
Yeah.
that's not what you would want. Like, that's not what I would want either. Like, you would want us to be like, no, like, you got this, like that encouragement part. But then it does get to a point, like with Denmark, where it's like, no, like, what's best in the situation is to come back.
Yeah.
So, like, just trying to like find that like middle spot of like being encouraging and hearing you and, letting you know, like, if you need to come back, you need to come back. Like, that's just that's what's best. That's what's best. But also not just being like, oh, you stubbed your toe.
The
like,
first little
let's
thing,
pack it
yeah.
up. Back to New York. Like,
Yeah, because I know we've spoken about this before, but I think it's a lot to do with the fact that Germany was my first ever experience doing something like that, was what made me sort of, I guess, jaded to it because I was so used to whatever it was in the States. And I now know, especially even talking to so many other players, like that maybe not quite exactly like that experience. There's still a lot about that experience that even to this day, people and myself included would be like, wow. But I do look back on that with a little bit different lens just because of the fact that it was like, yes, it was so difficult, but at least I did have a bunch of other American players. Like I have great friends from that time in my life, which maybe I didn't quite see while I was really in it. Denmark, though, like as you said, I think was different in that I definitely didn't like just kind of bow out at the first sign of trouble, which I noticed that happened to some people in Germany. Like they would show up day one, by day two, they were on a flight home because they were like, whoa, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was crazy, but I think, I don't know, like if you really wanted to like play, it was a chance for you to play. And I think you probably should have given it more than just like one day to see what it was. But Denmark, yeah, like I still look back on that and I don't really regret anything. Sure, there's some times where I'm like, oh, what if I just like stuck it out and pushed it out? But I'm like, I don't really think there was anything left for me to gain there because I'm like, even if I had gone on those trials or whatever, I don't think I was in a place where I could have played at my best. And yeah, by the time that I left, I had really like agonized over that decision. It wasn't just something that I was like, all right, yep, I'm going to leave tomorrow. It was like I had spoken to you guys a ton. I had spoken to a ton of other people that I like seek advice from. And most people were kind of in like a similar boat once I explained the situation. And they were like wanting me to kind of stay. But at the same time, they were like, if you've thought about it for this long and this is kind of where you're at, then like it makes sense. And there were some people too that also from first me bringing kind of the situation to them were kind of like, yeah, so I think it's probably best for you to come home. So and that kind of like, I guess, changed my perspective on it a little bit. And when I came here, it was just so unique because I came here and like you said, the weather was amazing, but I came here with so fewer, I guess, expectations of what I wanted out of the football part because I knew like I'd been through so much. I knew like this could go a million different ways. This could go fantastic. I could go on trial with 20 teams and none of them want me. Like it literally could go any possible way. So then in the beginning, when I went on trial with my team, the next day they call me, they want to sign me. And then like I'm in the team, everybody's like nice and the coach is nice and like it feels like they really want me there. And then as we get into some of the friendlies, like I'm playing a lot in the friendlies. I'm starting some of I'm playing different positions. I'm doing this, that, and the other. There was almost a part of me in the beginning that was like,
is this
why,
real?
Yeah. Why is this all like good right now? And it's like sunny every day. And like this, it was really kind of like that. And obviously now as the season has gone on, there's been its ups and its downs, but it has been, I'm so grateful for this experience because it has shown me that there can still be times where you play or an experience like this, going to play overseas, that can be positive. And that doesn't even necessarily mean that I have to go and do this again and again and again for 10 more years, but it just like, I don't know, I didn't feel like Denmark was the end. And I think when I first got home, I thought it was the end for Denmark. And then just as the time kept going, I was like, it doesn't feel right to have that story just end like that. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. Go ahead.
I feel like something, especially with like sports, like as like careers or like passions and things like that. And even with like people who have like careers that are like their passion, something that I feel like a lot of people, and like myself included, kind of don't think about is that like if you just like put those blinders on and just like go head first and just keep going and going and going and going, even you're like, well, this is terrible and I hate this, but gotta do it because like it's what I love, and like eventually maybe someday, like, but this like when you like take that moment and you like take the blinders off and you look at it and you're like, okay, if I just keep going with this, is it actually beneficial to me, or is it going to make me hate the sport or hate the career because this one experience was so bad and I kept myself in this place? Where it's like, it's not really like, I feel like sometimes people be like, well, I'm not gonna like give up, but it's not necessarily giving up. It's like just literally being an adult, looking at the situation and being like, if I keep going this way, it's not going to end so well. Like, let's actually be smart about this. Like, what would be the smartest? And like, even still, like, you came home and like you said, you were like, that might have been enough for me. But it was like, you just needed more time to be like, okay, actually, let's try this again. Like, let's try Australia.
Yeah.
And especially with Denmark, like Mim was saying about like the COVID stuff and you're not really getting to know your teammates. One thing, I don't know if you realize this, but you are like very much like a family person and like not even just like blood. Like, obviously, when you're home in New York, you're very much like, you know, with your family and like with your friends that are basically family type thing. But like, even like in college, like you would find friends that were family and you would be going to like, you know, their mom's houses and, you know, seeing their dads and like stuff like that. And like now you're part of their family. And then you're in Germany and you're, you know, giving the boys haircuts and making dinner. Like, you know what I mean? Like now that's family. Like, and even like here now, like you're, you know, getting rides from teammates and we're going over to their mom's house for dinner. Like you like, I don't know, I mean to speak for you, but like you need that like family. Like even in it's different and it's, you know, all over and stuff, but you need like that like circle. So I feel like that's what made Denmark like 100 times worse is that you weren't able to like, you know, you weren't able to have that. Cause I'm sure there were plenty of players there who like probably you could have been friends with if you had the chance to chat with them outside of the, you know, practices. Like, but you didn't.
Water breaks at practice.
Yeah.
I don't know if I've ever really thought about that, but like it's so true. Like it's something that I know I've said to you guys and I think about a lot that's like the hardest part that's the hardest part about this for me is that it sucks that sometimes I feel like I have to choose between like being with you guys and, you know, even just like the little stuff where you guys are like, oh, like we're going up with our, you know, our cousins, our uncle and our aunt, we're going up to the lake just for a day. We're going to hang out and whatever, like just little things like that. And then obviously too, like I've missed a lot of big things too, which stinks, you know, like we've all, you know, there's probably been few and far between birthdays, like for all three of us, where all three of us were together. And, you know, this year, probably for my birthday, like I'll be over here, you guys will be home. And so, yeah, that's the hardest thing is like, I love doing this. I love a lot about this, but I also love, there's so much that I loved about like being home and being around for so many different of the events. And that family part is like a huge piece of it. And that's what made, you know, going to college in Philadelphia easier because I had this group, like we all lived in the house together and we felt like we could become our family. And yeah, it's tougher. It's tougher when, I don't know, it almost feels like kind of your ticket to entry into this kind of career. Like, you know, there's a little bit that you have to give up. There's a little bit that you have to sacrifice. I mean, even if I was playing for, you know, a team in the States, like there's not really any team that's, I mean, there's a team in Pittsburgh, but there's not really a team, you know, that's like right at home for New York. So it just, yeah, I don't know. It's tough.
I think what, I don't know, not to like speak for you, but maybe what makes it easier is that like we would never be the type to be like, no, don't go to Australia because then you won't be here for my half birthday. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we
maybe like
are
other
very
people in our family who, when you say you're going somewhere, they go, "You're going
What?
where?
What?
For how long?"
Huh? Yeah, like, because as much as obviously we wish that, you know, like I obviously wish all three of us could live in the same town all the time, 24/7, whatever. But like, I also know that like you have dreams you want to follow. Like, I have things I want to do. And like, that doesn't necessarily involve us all still living in our teeny town in New York. Like, so I feel like, not to pat ourselves in the back, but we are very supportive of like, no, like you need to go out there and like go overseas and like see what's out there and see what you can do.
Yeah.
Cause like I would never, obviously, like I said, I want to live with, you know, in the same town with you always. But I know that like you got things you gotta do. And like that's what phones are for. Like that's what FaceTime's for. Like it's not really like you have to be like without family, just not next to family.
Yeah. So we do try to make the best of every situation that we can to still stay close and stay involved and still be, even if we're far away, still be like so much a part of your life, even if it's during like just everyday things when we have a chat and you're doing the dishes, it's just like we're just there to be supportive and to know about what's going on and hear about the daily things. So it's like even if you're not there, you still feel like you're a part of what's going on.
Yeah.
And I think when you were talking about, being able to appreciate what you have here, I think too the fact of what you did experience in prior situations too also helps you to appreciate what you have now so much more, because you've had different experiences, and whether it was living experiences or team experiences or with different players, and then to have it be so much better here, that it really makes you enjoy this that much more, because you know how it was in other scenarios.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think, I mean, two things I'll just say to that point. The first, talking about the family piece, I think the one thing that's helped me as well is kind of, I've always known that it seems like it almost seems like for both of us that there's this kind of, we need to go out and experience things on our own. And then I kind of know, I feel like I want us to all be, back around in the same area and whatever event, kind of, it's like if you know where the road is going to wind up, sort of. And even at that point, there might still be other factors to it, but sometimes the winds don't feel as crazy where you're like, where am I going with some of these like veers off course here? But yeah, when you're saying about this experience, like being grateful for it, I 100% agree that it's hard to describe. Like I said in the beginning, this season has still had its like ups and downs. And so I don't want I don't want to say as if like, oh, it's like been perfect. 'Cause I don't want anyone out there to even think like any experience, even if you're on the best team in the world and you're on $1 million and whatever. But I think part of me also knew that I needed that going into this. I needed to kind of get knocked down or get punched in the mouth and show myself that I could get back up to have this experience be all that I needed to get out of it, if that makes sense. And obviously, it's been much better knowing that the majority of the experience has been positive and happy, and it's not like, in Denmark where it didn't seem like there were a lot of lights kind of at the end of the tunnels. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and but it's also been tough, and I also, now having all these different experience, understand that that's kind of part of what you need out of a season or what you need out of sports. And I think it's kind of why people still go into sports or go into their passion, because that constant testing, sort of, it's that constant, like, you're put under the fire. And like we were even talking about just before, when we were talking about some ideas of like what to talk about in the podcast, like before I even kind of was able to make the jump to go and play other places, when I was still living in Philly and I worked for an insurance company and I did a 9 to 5, it's like, I don't know, I balanced those two things out, and I'm like, yes, this kind of path that I took is crazy. Like, there's no other way to describe it. It's crazy. It's up, it's down. Like, you can be so high and you can be so low. And whereas that other route where it's like the 9 to 5, I know exactly what I'm going to do each and every day. I work for this, USLI insurance company. It's very just different, and that is kind of, there's not really those same there's still ups and downs, but it's not quite the peaks and the valleys.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess that's been something that I've really been thinking about in this time here, that it still has been really hard. Like, obviously when I had to come home, like, that was really hard. And now being injured a second time, it's still challenging, but it feels good, I guess, to know that I'm like, I seem like better equipped now, or maybe I was always equipped to do it, but just didn't have the right situation for it. I don't know.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think something I think about a lot is like, this is very like, I don't know, but something I think about a lot is like in any like of the big sports movies about like these players that have like these incredible stories. Like it was never just they woke up like, you know, whatever sport, played soccer from the time they were 3 and then just, you know, walked on to Manchester United or whatever.
Yeah,
like, you know
yeah.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
there's always that struggle. And like not that it's like gonna make you feel any better, probably when you were in Denmark struggling, that like, oh well, in the sports movies, like you know what I mean? But it just like it feels so true. Like it doesn't come easy. And maybe that makes it like so much better when you are in like good places like this, or maybe it just like gives you that fuel to keep going, to be like, dang, like a couple years ago, like I was there, now I'm here. Like, and also too, like it, like you were saying, it does show you that like, yeah, like I can go through like crappy situations and like still like be back and like playing the sport I love and like not let it like cloud your vision of like, oh, like I hate soccer now because, you know, that situation. So like, yeah, like it is really impressive to go from like a really like kind of low and now be at like what I dare to say might be like a peak, you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think it's just like you said, just trying to find the balance, knowing that you can come back from different things, and it's not only something that can help you in soccer, but in any aspect of your life that you know it's like, okay, I know I can deal with adversity. I know I can handle a lot of things in a lot of different situations where now whatever you might be faced with, it might not be as difficult because it's like, well, I've dealt with a whole bunch of other things. So it's like,
Yeah.
I can do this. I can figure out a way. I can make it work. So, I mean, I think that's been a really good learning experience for you. And when you're speaking to so many different people on the podcast about what they've gone through and their careers, I mean, it's not just that you're interviewing them like as a spectator. I mean, the fact that you've also lived these life experiences too. I mean, you can really understand and really have empathy for what people have gone through, and you know what they've experienced in a lot of those situations. And that's what I think makes it so great when you are talking to these different people, because you have a different perspective, and the questions that you talk to them about and what you get to learn about the different players is so personal, and it really makes for great content.
Yeah, I appreciate that for sure. I think that's one thing I've started to kind of notice, that it almost seems like so many of the players I've spoken to and so many of the players that are at the top level are very, very talented, but I almost have started to believe that it's more just about those that are persistent and those that just like don't give up.
Yeah.
Because there's like every single player has a moment where you look at them and you wouldn't have really batted an eye had they given up. Like, you know, so many players, like, you know, huge knee surgeries, and they basically have to like reteach themselves how to walk, and you're like, I wouldn't have really blamed you had you said, you know what,
Right.
oh my God, like I don't know if I can do it. And now like they're back to playing. So it's almost like that seems to be that secret ingredient. There's like something is switched different in their mind, that they're like, they just don't give up. And I mean, I almost think it's like similar to like you and with like with teaching and stuff. Like you had one situation that was really poor, and because you like stepped up to the plate again, now you like kind of got an opportunity that is much better for you and following your passion. But I think like what you said before was really interesting about how when you do follow a passion, it is very up and down. So it's, I think, important, which maybe I should have done earlier on, to stay open-minded as you go through it. And sometimes you might go through something and you're following your passion, but this other thing that you kind of like maybe just do as a side hobby, all of a sudden like that really starts to become cool. Like being open to doing those things as well, instead of just, I've decided I'm going to be a pro soccer player and that is where I'm going, which is I think now at a point where like that's not my end all only one goal. Like, so I could keep going. I could do something like, I think that's just a better place, at least for me, like to be kind of more open-minded to other things.
I think something that I have been thinking about for a long time, and that like I definitely struggle with too, is like just remembering that like your life is not like written in stone.
Yeah.
Like I just feel like, you know, I went to
I
college.
think people think that sometimes.
Yeah, like I went to college, I got that education degree, and I was like, well, I'm going to be a teacher for 40 years. And I was like, even in college, I was like, ooh, 40 years as like a third grade teacher? Like, I know that's some people's jam and like go for it, but like I couldn't picture myself doing any one job for 40 years. So then like, yeah, like I had that really bad experience my first year teaching, and I said it to everyone and anyone, and I was like, nope, never again. I'm never setting foot in a school ever again. Couldn't catch me there.
Yeah.
And then a few months later, I was like, I don't really know if like I'm done with teaching and like education. Like, I don't know if I'm ready to leave that behind.
Yeah.
And so that's why I kind of like soft launched myself back into the school. I was like, all right, I'm not going to be like a full on like academic math teacher, grading papers, getting ready for state tests, but like, I'm going to get back out there and like be a teacher again in a school, and like a little bit something more along the lines of like my passions, like, dance and stuff like that. So yeah, like something that I think is so hard is like, it's not set in stone. Like it wasn't like, okay, I went to school, got the education degree, was a teacher, hated it. So now I'm going to be solely ed tech because I tried that. Also wasn't great. Like, just the idea of like, oh, it's okay to like, maybe I'll try this for a little bit and let's go over here, see what's over there. Like, even like you were saying, like, if you are like following that passion, it's going great. If like something else on the side starts like sparkling and like catching your eye, like you don't need to be like, no, can't do it. I'm on a mission right now. Like it's okay to be like, oh, what's that saying? Like
and even if in the beginning it's just you do it maybe kind of on the side and you do it a little bit here and there, it doesn't have to mean, oh, there's sparkle over there. All right, I'm dropping this and going to that. But if there's eventually a point where your main passion is kind of just not fulfilling you anymore and you want to go try something new, it's a scary jump. Like obviously, like I haven't made that official jump yet into like doing something else, but I know I will at some point. But I feel, I don't know. I think, like I said, I wish it had been something a little bit earlier. I was like, like just be open to other stuff, because there are other things out there that are cool that you might like besides just playing soccer.
And I think that's something that's hard or it's like it takes like almost a special type of person, I guess, to make their passions their career and their life. Because I feel like it's so easy to be like, oh, I love soccer, I want to do it forever. And then they do it forever and they just put those blinders on and they go head first, and then they get sick of it. They hate it. So it takes like
a lot of people get burnt out.
Yeah, like, and that's for anything, like not just athletics, like any kind of passion that you have that you want to make your career or make your life. It takes that mindset of like, it's okay to jump around a little bit, because you don't want to like run your passion into the ground and like now you hate it and now you're really like, what am I going to do? Because that was always like, like you've always had that in your brain, like you've always had that passion. Then when you make that jump, it's kind of like an all or nothing like leap. Like there's not a whole lot to fall back on anymore.
Yeah.
So it takes like, I think it's important to have that mindset of like that, like bopping around, like seeing what's up in different areas. So you're not getting like that burned out.
Yeah.
And knowing that you can have different passions and that it can change over time, and that being more open to those different experiences, as you've learned that by trying different things, it's now led you down different paths that you never even imagined a few years ago.
Yeah.
And that's been a pretty awesome experience for you.
Yeah.
So far.
It's like most people would be kind of bummed out if they were the exact same person at 30 that they were at 18. And that's not to say that your passion has to change. It could still be there, but it's also like, if all these other things about you have changed, like it's all right if other things have changed as well. But so it stinks that you guys are only here for this week, but obviously I know we got to get back to work and stuff like that, and
Yeah.
enjoying your summer while it's winter here. The
I-
one
that's-
part that stinks.
It was like 8 o'clock this morning. I opened like a Snapchat from my friend, knowing obviously it's like 8 p.m. in New York, and
Yeah.
it was like full sun out, and I was like,
Mm.
oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's probably like full sun, 80 degrees.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah.
I was like thinking about it. I was like, dang, like I'm looking a little pasty for June. Like,
Yeah. You'll be able to get back and get in that sun right away. But
yeah.
well, I appreciate you guys coming on the show, coming on the podcast. I want us to make sure we still got this day ahead of us so we can go and check out the city a little bit. And I appreciate you guys coming all the way out here to visit me. Like we said in the beginning, this was something that always had like wanted, so it feels
Yeah.
kind of surreal to even like actually be having it now. And
Yeah.
it just feels like, I mean, we still got 2 more days and stuff, so but it just feels surreal that it's already like midway, towards the
Yeah.
week. So yeah, thanks so much.
Thanks for having
Thanks for having us.
Of course. 3rd time on the podcast and the debut as well, so we'll have to find more episodes down the road. Yeah, so that's all this week, folks, for this episode. I mean, yeah, I'm not sure exactly when this is going to come out, but that's all right. There'll be more episodes coming up in the coming weeks. Hopefully a couple more. I'm trying to see if maybe I can get some like players on my team and people around the club and stuff to do maybe some more here in the studio. So, because these have been pretty cool in the studio.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and that's it for this week. So if you like the episode, if you like the show, subscribe on YouTube or follow along whatever podcast platform you use, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. And then if you want to support the podcast that little bit extra, patreon.com/in11pod. You get access to the episodes the day before. And then if we get more people on the Patreon, then we'll kind of start to maybe do some more exclusive content, or we've the merch has been requested for a while.
Yes,
So
definitely.
yeah, the people want merch.
The people do.
But we got to run those Patreon numbers up. So go and check that out. But yeah, that's it for this episode. Anything from you guys?
I'm good.
All right. Is that enough? Catch you on the next one.